Om. 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 Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapiyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In the last verse, Bhagavan explained this subtle aspect that Atma Nirdvayat, that Atma being non-dual, this vision or Atma Darshan is Atma Samstitihi. When we have the knowledge in the of the self and abide in the self, that is the vision of the Atma. So these words all mean the same, because it is not that there is some other Atma knowing the Atma. There is no other self knowing oneself. Being oneself is knowing oneself. And this, with the knowledge when we have, we come to discover our true nature. Now this nature of this knowledge, what is it? When we have knowledge of any object, or we say we are ignorant of something, these are all thought modifications. In such knowledge, there is an object, there is a knower of the object, and there is a knowing. So there is this three: the knower, the knowing, and the known. The experiencer, the experience, and the experienced. So these three. But where the self alone is, the truth alone is, what is the nature of this knowledge? And do we require some other equipment, which we've already heard before, to know the self? Does the self becomes the object? Because it is the very subject, the consciousness that is aware of all the objects. Now Bhagavan explains the nature of this knowledge, what we call as knowledge or consciousness, this absolute knowledge, and where there is no distinction of the knower, the knowing, and the known. He explains to us this nature of consciousness. Jnana varjita jnanahina chet jnanamasti kim jnatumantaram. Jnana varjita jnanahina chet jnanamasti kim jnatumantaram. Jnanamasti kim jnatumantaram. Bhagavan explains this subtle idea of the nature of self-knowledge. He says, Jnana varjita ajnana hina chit. Chit, this consciousness, is beyond or devoid of jnanam. Varjita, devoid of jnanam. Here jnanam means the vritti knowledge, that thought that takes place, I know something. When I experience an object and understand it, experience it, I have this thought, I know this object. And also, when I do not understand something, I say, I do not know this thing, idea, or object. So Bhagavan says, Jnana varjita ajnanahina chit. This consciousness is beyond, devoid of these two, knowledge and ignorance. Because we have seen earlier also, I, the consciousness, am aware of both these thoughts which come and they disappear. Once I come to know something, no longer that thought I do not know is there. I come to know it differently. I say, oh, I now know this differently. These are thoughts. I am the awareness that is conscious of both these, and therefore I am beyond this. I am the knower of both the knowledge as well as ignorance. And therefore Bhagavan puts a rhetorical question. Jnanam asti kim kyatum antaram? Is there any other knowledge to know other than knowing the knower himself? Now, because this play of words is, we are used to these three: experiencer, experience, and experienced. Knower, knowing, and known. But the knower of everything is of the nature of consciousness, and that which is the source of light does not require any light to illuminate, because its nature itself is knowledge. Just as sun does not require you to hold a torch to see the sun. Sun is light himself. Chit or consciousness is knowledge itself. And therefore, do we require some other means to know this knower? The knower is one which knows everything. And therefore, recognizing that I am the knower, the seer, the consciousness, is knowing the self. Where is there any other knower to know the self, or any other means of knowledge to know the self? Because once our ignorance is removed, this is direct, that I am the knower. Now, to give an easy example, sometimes people say, a very basic statement, people say, I don't believe in God because I don't see God. We have not seen our great-grandparents. Doesn't mean that we do not have grandparents. Yeah? How do I know there is an Atma? I exist and I am conscious. I don't require anyone to tell me or to prove it to me, because I am conscious. It's just that I am associated with the body and the senses and the experience of the world, that I do not recognize myself as I am pure existence consciousness. This knowledge is knowing myself. There's no other knower to know it. Even spiritual knowledge, Brahma Vidya, removes our ignorance. And what I am itself is known to me because I am the knower. Now, in the same way, has any one of you seen your eyes? Even your physical eyes. Let me pause here and make you think. Have you seen your eyes? You may just say, of course I've seen my eyes in the mirror. That is a reflection. That can be even an illusion. How do I know that I have got eyes? I may have seen a picture of it, I may have seen a photograph of it, but with my eyes, I cannot see my eyes, nor can you say that with someone's eyes you see your eyes. Isn't it? But the fact that I see, I know I have got eyes. It is not that I have had darshan of my eyes. It is not that, I saw my eyes. The fact that I see, I know I have got eyes. And a person who is blind also sees that he does not have got eyes. This consciousness is self-knowing because it is the knower itself. Its nature is consciousness. And again, if one thinks that one part of consciousness recognizes another part of consciousness, or consciousness realizes itself, we still can think only in duality. And therefore this knowledge is unique. The fact I am and I know, this eternal knower requires no other knowledge or no other seer to know. And again, mathematically, if you say that consciousness 2 sees consciousness 1, then you can go ad infinitum. Then who is the ultimate seer? And that seer does not require to be seen. That I am consciousness is very clear. No? And therefore, other than the knower, who is the knower who will know this knower? There's no requirement itself. The knower knows that I know. This is the subtle nature of knowledge. And because our mind and intellect is used to this duality, constantly we are struggling even with this knowledge or in meditation to see, to know, to experience this Atma as an object. But knowledge is only revealing to us what is already there, which is self-evident. And this self, which is of the nature of consciousness, does not require any other means. In fact, there is no other means to know it. Other than consciousness, everything is inert. And inert things, objects or equipments cannot know the self. And therefore, the self itself is called as jnanam, chit, consciousness, knowledge. So I am that existence, consciousness. I am that eternal knowledge. This is what we have to understand about the nature of this knowledge. Otherwise, very often we read the books and say, oh, I know Atma is Satchidananda, I know Ishvara is Satchidananda, I know Atma Ishvara is one. The knowledge is so subtle that even people who know are struggling to know. When I say struggling to know the Atma as an object. This is the subtlety of the knowledge. And in this verse, when Bhagavan says, is there another seer required to know the seer? Just as I don't require somebody's eyes to know that I have got eyes. The fact that I have got sight, I know I have the eyes. So, once we've understood this, we've understood the nature of knowledge, and therefore all these different terms, enlightenment, or vision of God, vision of the self, knowledge of the self, experience of the self, abidance in the self, all language is in duality. And therefore, we are always looking out for an experience, an objective experience. And the subject, the self, cannot be objectified. Therefore, the subtlety and the difference in this knowledge. But it is indeed wonderful. It reveals to me that I am this self. Now, so far it has been pointed out that the Atma is existence and consciousness. And this is not at all difficult to recognize, because it's quite self-evident that I am conscious. When people say that somebody is unconscious, it means that person does not have, through the equipments, perception of the world, just like in sleep. But consciousness is of a totally different nature. It is the knower also that I was unconscious. In sleep, I was not conscious of the world. I was ignorant of any object. But I was ignorant that thought also, I am the knower of it. To understand this is not that difficult, but realization, freedom is gained when we are not conceptualizing this existence, consciousness, or verbally saying, I am Satchidananda, I am Brahman, or Soham. When Veshahanataha, when the identification with the equipments, means this notion that I am these limited equipments, are gone, I recognize that I am the unconditioned Atma, because there is nothing other than me. Then only we recognize that I am Brahman, I am infinite. And that which is infinite has got no boundaries, no limitations of time, space, and object. Therefore, eternal. There is no place where it's not all-pervasive. And when you say that not different from any object, one with everything, and therefore no limitation of time, space, object, unconditioned, and that is what is called as Purna, complete. When we understand that it is complete, it is infinite, and everything, Purnamadaha, Purnam idam, Purnat Purnam udacchate. It is from that infinite only everything has come out, and therefore everything is infinite. And when we dissolve these forms of the universe, which has come from the infinite as an appearance, no incompleteness comes in the infinite. Because the whole world is only an appearance. Even our sense of limitation is only our delusion out of our ignorance. And when ignorance is removed, we recognize that I am infinite. And only that which is infinite is happiness. In the limited and the finite, there is that sense of incompleteness by which there is always craving and desire. And when we don't get what we desire, we experience sorrow. Therefore, sorrow is born of our ignorance. But that which is infinite, that which is Purna, is happiness. And that is what this beautiful verse, complete secret of happiness, eternal happiness, the goal that we are seeking in every desire, in every action. What is that happiness? Is it an experience? Is it something that we have to gain? No. Happiness is me. I am happiness. Happiness is my nature. Ananda is my Swarupa. Not my quality that changes. I am happiness. And this happiness cannot ever go away from me. And Bhagavan says, Kim Swarupametyatma darshani avyaya bhava purnachit sukham. Kim Swarupametyatma darshani avyaya bhava purnachit sukham. Avyaya bhava purnachit sukham. Kim Swarupam iti. What is my nature? When we inquire, we have Atma Darshan. We have the knowledge, the abidance, the recognition, the realization of the self. And what do we recognize as ourself? That which is avyaya. Avyaya means undecaying, imperishable. Why? Because abhava. It is not created, it is not born, it is ever present and therefore undecaying, imperishable, unborn, undying, and also unchanging. And how much necessary is this knowledge during these uncertain times when we recognize that the self is unchanging, eternal. Apurna chit sukham. And the self, as we've just said before the verse, is apurna, it's complete, infinite. There is no other, there is no limitation in it. And of the nature of chit sukham, is of the nature of consciousness, and sukham, complete, infinite happiness. This is what is called as happiness. Otherwise, if the happiness is dependent on some finite or limited object, then that happiness is temporary. That happiness, we cannot be free to be happy. That is not freedom to get what we want, because already until we get what we want, we are not happy. So we are miserable before we get the thing. When we get the thing, the happiness is only finite and limited. And again, we become dependent, thinking that that object will give us happiness. And such a dependent happiness is the very cause of our sorrow. At the same time, our happiness cannot be complete by finite objects. Think about it. Just as if I think that after this long discourse, and online everything is quite long, and I am feeling that I would require a cup of hot milk. Now, if I get a cup of hot milk, because at the moment I desire it, but suppose I don't get it, I will feel miserable. And if I get it also, I'm hungry also. The milk does not just satisfy it satisfies my thirst, maybe it doesn't satisfy my hunger or my taste buds. I say, can I have a biscuit? And it goes on endlessly, our wants, because no pleasure is complete happiness. And what is this happiness of our own true nature? One will think that if happiness is my nature, then why am I miserable? But that is the inquiry we have to do. And in the next session, we'll be inquiring into not only what is happiness, what is the nature of a thing or a person, and how that is eternally with me. That secret of happiness is what we are going to inquire from this verse. And then we will understand what is freedom, what is liberation, what is unconditioned happiness, and what is living in freedom. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.